Welcome back to another project, and thank you for joining me once again as we continue building something fun together. In this project, we are going to create a digital clock that shows the current time in a simple and modern way. If you look at the final version of the project, you will notice that the website has a background image, which gives it a nice design and makes it more visually appealing. On top of that, we also have a clear title, and right below it, the current time is displayed in a digital format that is easy to read. The time shown on the clock is not just random. It is exactly the same as the time on your own computer, and it updates live. To make this work, we will be using JavaScript to get the current system time and then place it inside the layout of our beautifully designed website. In the next section, we are going to begin with the HTML part of the project, which will give us the structure we need for the clock. So let's get started, and I'll see you in the next section where we begin coding step by step. Let's begin building our exciting project together. Let's kick things off by opening Visual Studio Code. Let's close the Get Started tab to clear our workspace. Let's head to the File menu and click on Open Folder. I prefer to create the project on my desktop, so I select the desktop and click the New Folder button to make one. We call this new folder Digital Clock to match our project's name. Now, let's click the Select Folder button to choose our new folder. Let's close the Get Started tab once more, then in the Explorer section on the left side, right-click and select New File. Let's rename that new file to index.html and then press Enter. You'll notice our index.html file open on the right side, but it's completely empty. We can quickly generate an HTML5 boilerplate by typing an exclamation mark. So, let's type an exclamation mark and select the first auto-suggestion that pops up. This HTML5 boilerplate starts with the doctype declaration, which tells the browser that the page uses the HTML5 version. Since we are using HTML5 here, we simply need HTML in that position. Next comes the HTML tag, serving as the top-level container for everything in our HTML file. This HTML tag contains the head and body sections, while the lang attribute in its opening part specifies the page's language. For this project, we specify English as the page's language. Next comes the head section, which holds 3 meta tags and 1 title tag. The charset attribute in the first meta tag sets the character encoding for our HTML page. HTML5 recommends UTF-8 for web developers because it supports almost every character and symbol imaginable. Next, this meta tag tells the Internet Explorer browser to use its most recent rendering engine, called Edge Mode. We also have the viewport meta tag, which tells the browser how to resize and scale the page for different devices. To make viewing our code easier, let's press Alt and Z to enable word wrap. The content attribute right here includes 2 key parts. The first part makes the page's width match the device's screen width. For instance, someone viewing on a mobile device will see the page width fit that smaller screen, unlike a larger computer display. The second part sets the browser's initial zoom level to 100% by default. The title tag sets the name that appears in the browser's tab. To view our page directly in a browser within Visual Studio Code, we can use the Live Preview extension. Let's right-click inside the index.html file and select Show Preview from the Live Preview option. Look, the browser preview appears on the right side, empty because nothing is in the body section yet, but the title shows Document in the tab. Let's change the title tag to our project's name, Digital Clock. Notice how the title now displays Digital Clock in the Browser tab. let's collapse the Explorer panel to free up more space on the right. To collapse the panel fully, simply drag that vertical line to the left. Let's resize the browser preview a bit smaller and begin coding inside the body section. Let's start by adding an H2 heading and typing digital clock inside it. Right after the H2 tag, let's add a div with a class called clock. To do that, we type a dot followed by the word clock. Inside this div, we'll include sections for the hours, minutes, seconds, and AM/PM indicator. So, first, let's add an empty div right here. Inside this div, let's add a span and give it an ID for hours. We'll give the span an ID of hours and add 00 inside it as a temporary placeholder. We also add another span with a class called text and place hours inside it. To save some time, let's duplicate this div using Alt plus Shift and the down arrow key. For the next one, let's update it to minutes by changing the ID to minutes and adding the word minutes in the text. Next, let's set up the seconds by changing the ID to seconds and adding the word seconds in the text. For this last one, we can leave it empty inside and remove the extra span since it's just for the AM and PM display. For now, let's simply type AM directly inside this div so we can style everything in the next section. That wraps up the HTML structure for our project. In the next section, we'll begin styling our project with CSS. That completes our HTML setup for now, so I'll see you in the next section. In the previous section, we wrapped up the HTML for our project. In this section, we'll begin styling our project using CSS. Let's start by creating a new CSS file. Let's open the Explorer section by pressing Ctrl plus Shift plus E. Once the Explorer opens on the left, right-click inside it and select New File. Let's name this new file style.css and then press Enter to create it. Now, before we dive into styling our project with CSS, we need to link the CSS file in our HTML code. Let's switch back to our index.html file and add the link right below the title tag. Next, we add a link tag right after the title. Let's type link and select the third auto-suggestion for the CSS link tag. This link tag sets the connection between our HTML file and the external style sheet, while the href attribute specifies the path to that file. Since both files are in the same folder, we simply enter style.css as the href value. With the link in place, let's close the Explorer panel to continue. Let's switch to our style.css file to begin styling the project. Let's begin by styling the body element first. So, let's remove the default margin and center everything using display flex. Let's type body and open a set of curly braces. To remove the default margin, we set it to 0. To bring everything to the center horizontally, let's add display flex, which will arrange the items side by side. To stack the items vertically, let's set flex direction to column and use align item center to position everything horizontally in the middle. First, let's set the body height to match the full screen by using 100% of the viewport height. Next, we apply justify content center to align everything vertically in the middle. Next, let's add a background image to our project for a more appealing look, using the background property with the URL function to link an external image. Let's head to the desktop, open Google Chrome or your preferred browser, and search for Unsplash in the Google bar. The website we're using is unsplash.com, so click on it in the search results and head to the search bar. For example, let's search for the term nature. Let's switch the orientation to landscape and select any image that catches your eye. Feel free to pick any image you like. This one looks great, or perhaps that one nearby. Right-click on the image, select Copy Image Address, then switch back to Visual Studio Code and paste the link inside a set of double quotes. After pasting the URL, the image should appear in the background. Let's press Alt+Z to enable word wrap so we can view the full code clearly before moving on to styling. First, let's style this main headline, the digital clock. The digital clock title uses an H2 tag, so we target it first. Let's capitalize all the letters by using the text transform uppercase property, and then increase the letter spacing to 4 pixels for more space between the characters. Next, let's set the font size to 14 pixels to make it smaller and add text align center for perfect centering. It's already centered from the body styles, but to keep it perfectly centered when we style other sections, let's add text align center. Next, let's style the clock container section that holds everything. Next, let's style the clock container div that holds everything together, targeting it with .clock since it's a class, and set its display to flex so items appear side by side. Let's add a small margin of 5 pixels to create some gentle separation between the elements. Let's proceed to the next step and target all the span elements. So, let's target the span elements by writing .clock space, span right here. Let's set the width to 100 pixels and the height to 80 pixels. Next, let's set the background to a slate blue color. You'll notice the change immediately, so let's adjust the opacity to 80% to make it lighter and then set the text color to white. Next, to center all the content neatly, we apply Display Flex. Once we apply Display Flex, you'll immediately see the impact of those width and height settings. Then, we apply Justify Content Center to align everything horizontally in the middle and align Item Center to position it vertically in the center. Next, we increase the font size to 50 pixels to make the numbers larger and more prominent, while adding a text shadow for added depth. For the text shadow effect, we simply type text shadow. For the text shadow, the first value is the horizontal offset, set to 2 pixels, followed by the vertical offset at 2 pixels, a blur radius of 4 pixels, and white as the color. To make the shadow black, we'll use the RGBA function with values of 0 for red, green, and blue to create the black base, plus 0.3 for the alpha to add 30% opacity. So, let's set the font family now that we forgot earlier. Let's set the font family to sans serif so the text looks cleaner right now, and we'll adjust the time labels later while focusing on the hours, minutes, and AM/PM displays. Next, we will target the span elements with the class of text. Let's target those span elements with the text class by writing .clock.text and set their height to 30 pixels. Next, set the font size to 10 pixels to make them smaller. Apply uppercase text with the text transform property. Increase the space between letters by using letter spacing set to 2 pixels. Next, we set the background to dark blue instead of slate blue and apply 80% opacity. With this background image in place, adding background size cover will let us see the full image much more clearly. This adjustment lets us clearly see the opacity's impact on our website. And let's set the color of this text to white as well. For the H2 element, let's change its color to white for better visibility. Next, let's target the AM element to make it smaller and position it at the bottom. To reposition the AM/PM indicator, we'll set its position to absolute so it moves freely. For it to stay relative to the clock container, first change the clock div's position to relative. then target the AM/PM element using its ID with a hashtag followed by AM/PM. Now, let's open a set of curly braces to begin defining its styles. To move it to the bottom, let's set the bottom property to 0 while using the absolute position. To position it at the bottom, set the bottom property to 0, then adjust the width to 60 pixels and height to 30 pixels. Like the text sections, reduce the font size to 20 pixels since it's too large and change the background color to green for a distinct look while keeping the text white. The white text color works perfectly with the green background and our styling looks complete. In the next section, we'll use JavaScript to update these numbers dynamically with the real time from your computer. That wraps up our CSS styling, so join me next for the exciting JavaScript implementation. In the previous section, we finished the CSS part of our project. In this section, we'll start adding JavaScript to our project to make it interactive. To get started, let's create a JavaScript file. Press Ctrl-Shift-E to open the Explorer panel. On the left in the Explorer panel, right-click and select New File. We'll name the file index.js. Then, we press Enter to create the file. Before we use JavaScript, we need to connect our new file to the HTML page so the browser can run it. Let's go back to index.html, and at the end of the body section, add a script tag to link our JavaScript file. Type SC, then select the second auto-suggestion from the list. Since index.html and index.js are in the same folder, the link only needs the file name. Simply enter index.js as the URL. We press Ctrl-S to save the file, then collapse the Explorer panel by dragging the divider to the left so we have more space on the right. Let's tidy up the layout by adding overflow hidden to the body in our CSS to remove the horizontal scroll bar for a cleaner look. Simply add overflow hidden to the body section. With that change, reducing the window size keeps the layout clean with no horizontal overflow. Press Ctrl-S to save this file, then switch to index.js. In our JavaScript, we'll grab 4 elements we want to update. These are the hour, minutes, seconds, and the AM/PM label, which will update dynamically with JavaScript. Each of these has an ID of hour, minutes, seconds, and AM/PM, and we'll select them in index.js. To grab an element by its ID, we use the getElementById method. Let's switch to index.js and create a constant to hold our element. We'll call it the hour element and set it using document getElementById with the ID hour. Press Alt+Z to toggle word wrap so we can see the full code on screen. Next, let's select the minutes element. We'll call it the minutes element and set it using document getElementById with the ID minutes. That selects the minutes element correctly. Next, let's grab the seconds element. We'll duplicate that line and change minutes to seconds. This line selects the seconds element. And finally, let's select the AM/PM element and create a constant for it. We'll name it AM/PM element and set it equal to document.getElementById with the ID of AM/PM. Perfect. Now we have selected all the necessary elements. With these elements selected, we can now update their content dynamically. Now, let's create a function to get the current time from our computer. So, let's define this function as updateClock. First, we'll retrieve the current hour from our computer using the date constructor. Let's create a variable for the hour since we will adjust it later on. So, we set this variable to a new date object. And now, let's grab the current hours from that date object. To retrieve the current hour, we use the getHours method. For the minutes, we'll set m to the new date object's getMinutes method. Next, for the seconds, we create a variable s using the new date object's getSeconds method. Finally, we'll set the AM/PM variable to show the time period. For the AM/PM, we can't get it directly from the computer, but we'll add simple logic to determine it. First, we'll initialize the AM/PM variable to AM as the default value. And we'll create a logic for the hour later to decide if it's PM instead. For instance, we add a simple check. If the hour exceeds 12, we subtract 12 from the hour first. For example, after noon, the hour jumps to 13 on the clock. So, for 13 o'clock, subtracting 12 gives us the number 1. Then we set the AM/PM value to PM for afternoon hours. For example, after noon, like 1 in the afternoon, our H becomes 1 and AM/PM sets to PM. With that logic in place, let's move on to displaying the time. To display the hour, we set the inner text property of our hour element to the H value. To keep our clock updating in real time, we need to call this function every second. To begin, we call the updateClock function once right here. And you can see the current hour displayed right here. However, to update the seconds in real time, we need to call this function every second. So, before adding the timer, let's complete this initial setup. Next, set the minutes element's inner text to the M value. For example, my computer currently shows 8:30 a.m. Next, set the seconds element's inner text equal to S. Now, set the inner text of the AM/PM element to the AM/PM variable. But first, we need to define this AM/PM variable right here. With the AM/PM variable now defined, let's check the display. Now, everything looks correct as the time displays same as my PC. Try refreshing the page, and you'll see the seconds update each time. Instead of refreshing the page each time, we can use the setTimeout method to call this function every second. The setTimeout method sets a timer that executes a function after the specified time passes. The first parameter in the setTimeout method is the function to run. The second parameter controls the delay time in milliseconds. We'll set that delay to 1 second, which equals 1000 milliseconds. And we want this function to run every second. This setup calls the function again after 1 second passes. First, the code starts from this point and then runs the updateClock function right away. And then, as soon as that 1 second passes, the setTimeout calls the function again. And then the code flows back to this point and repeats the process. Then, after 1 second passes, it calls the function again. This setup creates an infinite loop that keeps the clock updating forever. Let's call the updateClock function right here to get started. Now, you can clearly observe how the function keeps calling itself repeatedly, once every single second, in order to continuously refresh and update the displayed seconds. This ensures that the value you see is always accurate and happening in real time without any delay. Next, as we talked about earlier, the next step is to make sure that single-digit time values are displayed with leading zeros. At the moment, our clock shows numbers like 1, 2, or 9 on their own, which doesn't look consistent. By adding a 0 in front, we'll turn them into 01, 02, or 09, making the display much clearer and more standard. Most digital clocks display single-digit times with a leading 0, like 08 instead of just 8. To add the leading 0, we'll write a simple if statement that checks whether the value of h is less than 10. Whenever this condition is true, it means the number is a single digit, so we attach a 0 in front of it before showing it on the screen. So, if this condition is true, simply write 0 plus h. Here, h represents our current hour value. If the condition isn't met, simply use the h value as it is. Since 8 is less than 10, it adds a 0 to make it 08. But for hours like 10 or higher, we skip that leading 0 at the start. Let's apply the same leading 0 logic to the minutes and seconds as well. Let's duplicate this if statement 2 more times, first changing h to m for minutes, then to s for seconds. To select all of them efficiently, highlight the first one and press Ctrl D. So, start by highlighting the first line, then press Ctrl D to select the next matching one. And finally, update the last selection to use S for seconds. With that, we've finished adding leading zeros to hours, minutes, and seconds. Let's open the project in the browser to see it working there as well. As you can see, the clock is now functioning exactly as intended and is correctly displaying the current time. The hours, minutes, and seconds are all shown in the proper format. Now, let's resize the browser window smaller to see its responsiveness. You'll notice how the layout adapts smoothly as we resize it. We have now completed our project together. I hope you really enjoyed the process of building this clock step by step and also picked up some valuable knowledge along the way. Thanks so much for joining me on this little project, and I hope you had a great time following along. Let's keep this momentum going and continue building even more exciting projects together in the next lessons, where we'll take what we've learned here and push it even further.